Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes for any late people to have time to join in and get settled. In the meantime, for those of you who have already joined, the chat box on the right-hand side, if you wouldn't mind just confirming that you can hear me okay, then that means we can get started once I've had that confirmation. I don't want to be talking to myself. So if somebody in the Q&A chat box can just confirm, yes, you can hear me, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Just put a little notification in the Q&A box, so if somebody could like that, if you can hear me, that would be great. Or just write yes, you can hear me, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much to that person who's confirmed. So we'll get the presentation underway. So my name is Gemma Callow. I am the Communications Manager for the Brumberries programme, leading on stakeholder engagement. I am working from home, so please bear with me if you hear any dogs in the background. This is being recorded this evening, and after the webinar we will send you a copy of this so that you can share it with any family or friends, or if you have any further questions you can come back to us. So with that in mind, I'll get the presentation underway. I'm joined by my colleague Ima, who's going to be driving for me. So Ima, if we could have the first slide, please. Thank you. So Birmingham's Clean Air Zone is being introduced on the 1st of June this year because air pollution and poor air quality has been declared a national health emergency. Every year between 28,000 and 36,000 people die across the UK from conditions linked to poor air quality. Those conditions can include heart disease, diabetes, cancer, lung disease. And so we have been instructed by the government that we need to bring in safe and legal levels of air quality. In Birmingham alone, 900 people every year die from conditions which are worsened by air pollution, and our children are particularly impacted because they are smaller, they are closer to ground and closer to those exhaust fumes. They inhale 3 times as much air pollution than we do as adults, which has a significant impact on their development. I won't run through all the stats on screens, but you can see there that there's a clear link between air pollution and poor health. Next slide, please, Ima. Thank you. So prior to COVID, we undertook some research into how people travel into Birmingham city centre, and what we ascertained that 50% of all journeys into Birmingham were undertaken by car. Of those journeys, 250,000 of them every day were for less than 1 mile. So what the Clean Air Zone is intending to do is to deter high polluting vehicles from coming into the city centre. But what we also want to do is to get those people who are travelling less than 1 mile to consider alternative forms of transport, whether that's public transport, walking or cycling. So that's the intention of the Clean Air Zone. Next slide, please, Ima. Thank you. So as mentioned, the government has instructed that we need to introduce a clean air zone. We are not the only city to be doing so. On Monday, Bath became the first city outside of London to introduce their clean air zone, and across the UK, cities like Liverpool, Bristol, Oxford are all looking at implementing their own zones. So we are the first of what will be many. Each local authority is responsible for setting the boundaries and category of clean air zone that they want introduced. So in Birmingham, we are introducing a category D clean air zone. It's important to stress that a clean air zone is not the same as a congestion charge. So with a congestion charge, you will be charged, every vehicle will be charged to enter a certain area. With a clean air zone, it is only the most high polluting vehicles, which we anticipate will be about 1 in 4 vehicles when the zone goes live on the 1st of June. Because we are a category D though, that will mean that private cars that don't meet the emission standards will be included, and that's alongside buses, taxis, vans, coaches, HGVs, etc. Next slide, please, Ima. Thank you. So if you are in a vehicle that will not be subject to the charges, you do not need to take any action. However, come the 1st of June, if you are in a vehicle that is considered high polluting and does not meet the emission standards, you will be subject to a daily charge to enter the clean air zone. So the clean air zone is everywhere you can see on screen. That's the blue area. It's everywhere within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. So you can drive round the Middleway, no problem at all. But if you're in a non-compliant vehicle from the 1st of June, you'll be subject to a daily charge. There'll be ANPR cameras inside the zone that will pick you up and determine whether or not you will need to pay. So the daily charge is £8 a day for cars, taxis and small vans, and £50 a day for HGVs, coaches and buses. It's important to stress that a day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. During that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave as many times as you want for a single charge. However, if you cross that midnight threshold, you will be subject to 2 charges. So for example, if you drive in at 10 PM and leave at 3 AM, you've crossed that threshold, you would need to pay twice. You'll be able to pay online or over the phone using the government payment system, and you have a 13-day payment window. That window consists of 6 days before you go into the zone, the day you go into the zone, or 6 days after. If you do not pay within that 13-day window, you will be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120. That's reduced to £60 if paid within 14 days. There are over 300 signs that have been installed on the approach and boundary to the zone, warning you that you're approaching a chargeable area. However, that is the only warning you will get. You will not receive a text or an email to say that you've entered the zone and that you need to make a payment. The onus is on you as a driver to know that you've entered, and is on you as a driver to make the payment within that allocated time frame. Next slide, please. So the big question, and the one that you'll all want the answer to, is will I be charged? What is a compliant vehicle? So the easiest thing to do is to go onto the Brumbury's website, and there is a link there to the National Government Vehicle Checker, and that will tell you whether or not you will be subject to the charges in Birmingham and any other clean air zone that's coming forward. That's the easiest thing to do. However, just to make it clear, we are looking for emission standards to be of a certain criteria. So if you have a Euro 4 petrol vehicle or better, or a Euro 6 diesel vehicle or better, you will not be charged. You can find this information in your V5C logbook. Other vehicles that won't be charged are gas Euro 6, fully electric, fully hydrogen, and hybrid electric, meeting those Euro 4 and Euro 6 standards that I discussed earlier. So to put it into context, most Euro 4 vehicles of petrol began to come into circulation from 2006 onwards. And for Euro 6 diesel, most of those vehicles were being manufactured from September 2015 onwards. I must stress, that those dates are just a guideline. It is the emission standard that we are looking for. Next slide, please. Thank you. So contrary to some media reports, this is not intended to be a money-making scheme for the council. It's not intended to prop up our budgets. For us, if we make no money from the clean air zone, then that's the best news we can hope to achieve, because it means there are no high polluting vehicles passing through the zone, and therefore air quality will improve. However, we do know that particularly in the early days, we will make some money from this. So we are legally bound that money has to be reinvested in transport related projects and policies. It cannot be used to support the council's general services such as bin collections or repairs to floozy and the jacuzzi. So some of the schemes that have been identified in line with that are introducing controlled parking zones on the boundary of the clean air zone. That's to protect residents and stop people parking their cars on the outside and walking across, causing problems for them. We are funding a hydrogen bus pilot, and we will be implementing city centre pedestrianisation routes and active and sustainable travel routes such as cycle lanes, so that the option to walk and cycle becomes safer and more appealing to do so. Next slide, please. So in introducing the clean air zone, we do recognise that this is going to cause some disruption. It's intended to do that because that's the only way you can get change. However, we do recognise that some people will need more support than others and that little bit of extra time to get ready. So a consultation was held in 2018, to which we received the highest number of responses ever. And that consultation was to ascertain those people who needed that bit of extra time and that little bit more support. And using that information, for which we received over 10,000 responses, we have implemented a scheme of temporary exemption permits. So I will talk through in depth the one for residents, which is most relevant to this call this evening. But basically, if you live in the Clean Air Zone and you are the registered keeper of a non-compliant vehicle at an address within the Clean Air Zone, you can apply for a temporary exemption permit for up to 2 years from the date the zone goes live. Not the date you apply, but the date the zone launches. I must stress this needs to be applied for. And what that means is you can drive that non-compliant vehicle for up to 2 years without incurring any charges. The other exemptions that we have available are for people who live outside of the zone and work within it. So people who commute into the city centre and work at least 18 hours a week at a premises within the zone and earn less than £30,000 a year. They can also apply for a temporary exemption of up to 1 year. There are also temporary exemptions available for commercial vehicles registered within the Clean Air Zone, and we're also implementing a voucher scheme at 3 out-of-hours practices that are based within the zone. That is Birmingham Children's Hospital, Badger Medical and Bathrow Medical. All 3 of those practices offer out-of-hours care, so people who visit those sites in a non-compliant vehicle can collect a voucher which they can redeem online to avoid any charges. Next slide, please, Ima. So based on the audience we have on this call, I'm just going to talk through in a little bit more detail about the support available for residents. So we can now accept applications for you to apply for a temporary exemption permit. What you will need to supply us with is evidence that you own that vehicle. So, for example, a copy of your V5C logbook, or if you lease the vehicle, vehicle documentation. And then we also need proof of address, so something like a council tax bill or a utility bill. You need to supply us with that evidence, and then what we will do is grant you with a temporary exemption permit that will commence on the 1st of June 2021, and then will run for 2 years. If you wait until, say, August to apply for whatever reason, you will have 2 years less that original month. 2 months, sorry. So it is 2 years from the 1st of June, not 2 years from the date you apply. I would strongly encourage anybody who's eligible to apply for that as soon as possible. At the moment, we're able to turn those applications around very quickly. As we get closer to the launch and closer to the start date of the zone, we're obviously going to get more and more applications. We're going to become busier, and we won't be able to guarantee that those applications can be turned around in time for the 1st of June. So if you are the owner of a non-compliant vehicle and live in the zone, that's the information you need to submit to us. Once again, to stress, if your vehicle is not subject to charges, you don't need to apply for an exemption or take any action. Next slide, please. There are also some ongoing, what are called national exemptions. So if you are the owner of a motorcycle or a show vehicle, like a fairground vehicle, you will not be subject to any charges, nor will you be charged if you have an historic vehicle, which is over 40 years old, a specialist vehicle, such as police, fire, ambulance or recovery vehicles, or community and school transport, so that's not-for-profit services such as Bring and Ride. It's also important to point out that if you have a blue badge, you are not automatically exempt from the charges. So if you are a blue badge holder and your vehicle does not meet that emission criteria, you will be subject to the charge. However, if your vehicle has disabled or disabled passenger tax class, which is tax class 85, then you will be exempt from the charges. To have that classification, it will be specified in your V5C logbook, and you need to be in receipt of certain benefits to qualify for that classification. You can find full details of that on the DVLA website, which says what benefits you need to be in receipt of and how to get that classification added to your vehicle. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'll just touch upon this quite lightly as it's not relevant to the audience on this call, but in addition to the temporary exemption permits that we have available, we did also receive a package of funding from the government to help provide financial support. So our taxi drivers who are licensed with Birmingham City Council can apply for a share of £15 million funding to upgrade their vehicles so they are compliant. We also have £10 million pot of funding for small and medium-sized enterprises in the West Midlands to upgrade their HGV vehicles, And there's also a £10 million pot of money for people who work within the zone but live outside of it, those commuters that I referenced earlier. They can apply to be part of the scrappage scheme, where they can scrap their non-compliant vehicle and receive £2,000 in credit towards a compliant vehicle, or £2,000 in credit towards a mobility scheme such as a Swift card. Next slide, please. So it's important to note that the Clean Air Zone is not being delivered in silo. It's part of a wider vision for the council to improve the city centre, to make it safer to travel and more pleasant to do so. So the Clean Air Zone is seen as the catalyst for change, but it's tied in to other projects such as the transport plan, which you may have heard about. It was consulted on last year. So the transport plan has 4 major visions for the city centre. One of which is to reallocate road space. So this is where you may have heard about the council implementing a cell system, almost like a slice of pizza, where if you're in a private car, you will only be able to drive in and out of a particular cell or pizza slice. If you want to go into the next slice, you'll need to come out of that cell, go around the ring road and then go in. Through traffic will be available only for public transport, walking and cycling. That's to, again, make public transport more appealing, feeding back on some of the concerns we've had about public transport being congested and not on time. So that will get priority access. We're also looking at transforming the city centre, as I mentioned earlier, by making pedestrianisation much more accessible, making walking safer to do so, more pleasant to do so, prioritising active travel that I've talked about earlier, and also managing demand by ridding the city centre of all free parking that's owned by the council, to deter people from wanting to drive their cars in and park in the city centre. By making it chargeable, it acts as a deterrent, and again, it should encourage people to consider alternative ways of coming in. Next slide, please. Again, this just builds on the previous slide. So as well as the transport plan, we also have the City Council's pledge to be net carbon zero by 2030. So we have the Route to Zero programme in effect as well, which the Clean Air Zone is going to be a key component of supporting. And as mentioned earlier, we do have the hydrogen bus scheme that we're funding, and we're also purchasing up to 50 electric Hackney carriages that our taxi drivers can lease from us. These are very expensive to buy outright. They're about £60,000. We understand our drivers can't afford to purchase them outright, so we will buy them and lease them to them. And the other thing that we're doing is implementing a number of electric vehicle charging points across the city, the first of which are going in this month. But over the next few years, up to 300 new charging points will be implemented to make those travelling in electric cars a lot easier to do so. Next slide, please. So on screen now are the contact details that you need. So if you do want to apply for an exemption, if you do need any more information, please visit the Brumberries website. On there, you can also find a link to the government vehicle checker that I referenced earlier. From there, you can click, enter your registration, check if you're going to be charged. That's the absolute first thing to do. If you will be subject to the charges, then you can apply for your exemption through the same website. If you have any questions that haven't been answered tonight, please pop them in the chat on the right-hand side in the Q&A. I will answer them for you if I can. Otherwise, you can contact the team directly at cleanair@birmingham.gov.uk. So I'm just going to go quiet for a moment. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in the chat and I will answer them. Thank you. According to my clock, it's 19:21. I will give it to 19:22. If there's no questions, we can end the webinar early. I would encourage you, though, to please speak to family and friends and colleagues to make them aware, encourage them to sign up to any future webinars we have, share the links with them that we will send you following this webinar this evening. The main objective for us is to improve air quality in the city. It is not to make money. So the more people who are aware, who are paying the charges on time or finding alternative ways to travel, the better. So I'll give it just another couple of seconds. Okay, will you be allowing private scooters in the cycle lanes? There is currently a trial of electric scooters and private scooters taking place at the moment across the city. It's our colleagues in the travel demand team who are looking at that at the moment. So there's a lot of work going on there. Once we have the results from that, we will publish that information. So I can take that question away and see if there's any update, but at the moment that's something that's being looked into to assess demand, etc. Is there any other questions? Okay, I'll give it to 1923, and if there's nothing further, then I will let you all go and enjoy your evenings. I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time out tonight to join us. I hope you found that helpful. Like I say, please go on the website. There's a whole host of information on there, and if you can't find the answer, please do drop us an email. I've just had another question. Is the scrappage scheme available for residents in the city centre? No, this is a scheme that is only open to commuters. That was ascertained through the consultation, and because residents have the additional year of exemption, it will only be open to workers. Oh, another question. Fantastic. Will the route around the ring road be excessively congested? So what we're doing when the zone goes live on the 1st of June, we're currently monitoring traffic levels in the city centre at the moment and air quality levels. We will continue to do that once the zone goes live. I think there will be some growing pain in the initial early weeks as people do move around onto the outer ring road to avoid the charging. We will be monitoring that closely, and we will also be monitoring the impact that has on air quality in those surrounding areas. So that's something we will be closely looking at and taking into consideration going forward. Let's give it another minute. Okay, if a family visits from outside the clean air zone, are they subject to the charges? That will depend on what vehicle they're visiting in. So the best advice will be to get any visitors that you have coming to see you to check if they're going to be charged on the government vehicle checker. Like I say, we're anticipating it's going to be about 1 in 4 vehicles. So they will need to go online, check if they're going to be charged, and if so, make arrangements to either pay or find alternative ways to travel into the city centre. Okay, I'll give it another minute just to see if there's any more questions. Okay, I think that's everything. Like I say, please do visit the website. Please drop us an email if there's something you think of afterwards. Thank you for the feedback from that person, much appreciated. I do hope you found this useful. Please, like I say, do share the message with family, with friends, with colleagues. We are doing this all the way up until the launch, and we want to make sure as many people as possible are prepared. So please keep in touch with us. We're here to help, and thank you very much for your evenings. Take care. Goodbye.